Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the best free hit team for Double Gameweek 25. This video is recorded before the Chelsea versus Crystal Palace game in Gameweek 24, so the points and the rank won't be fully up to date by the time this video is published, so bear that in mind, and you will see my final rank and how I did in Gameweek 24 in the team selection video. Be sure to drop this video a like, and let's get this to over 200 as we're looking to push on towards 23k subscribers and beyond. Also check out all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Hound. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. Flecken has scored 17 points in the last two game weeks, but there's no denying that this double is very tough. Liverpool at home and Man City away. You can't get much tougher than that. And you might be wondering, why are you going for Flecken of all these options? I just think he can make a lot of saves and also get a few bonus points potentially. That might be stretching it a little bit. Clean sheets are pretty much virtually impossible, you could argue, for Flecken, and maybe Kaminsky would be your preference, but it's also Man United and Liverpool away, therefore Kaminsky. Man United at home, maybe there's a clean sheet there, but even then, with the form United are in and the players they've got back, I don't think that's possible either, and we are going to go for a Luton Town defender. So to balance things off a little bit, I have gone for Flecken. There's no denying that Ederson and Alisson are the best options in isolation for the goalkeeper position in Double Gameweek 25, but with Man City, the preference would be two midfielders and a forward, or maybe one defender, one midfielder, and a forward. And with Liverpool, I think one defender and two attackers probably fits the bill as well. So that's why there's no Alisson or Ederson. Amongst single game goalkeepers, I think Raya stands out against Burnley away. But ultimately, with the amount of saves that Flecken can make against Man City and Liverpool, maybe a bonus point or two would also be a massive cherry on top of the cake. And yeah, of course, no clean sheets are really going to happen there for Flecken, but I would probably go for him amongst double gameweek goalkeepers with everything taken into account. Let me know if you disagree down in the comment section below. But the other goalkeeper I'm going for is just to really sit on the bench, and I'm going for Areola. You could also go for Dubravka or an even cheaper option to give you the extra millions you might need for other positions in this team. But of course, it's all down to personal preference, and I can understand if you don't want to go for a goalkeeper who you don't even trust to keep a clean sheet. But let's now move on to the defenders. I would still recommend one Arsenal defensive coverage against Burnley. I think a clean sheet is quite likely on paper. And when you're looking at all teams, even with Man City and Liverpool, I think only those two would be ahead of Arsenal in terms of chances of keeping a clean sheet in Double Gameweek 25. And Gabriel has been in great goal-scoring form. He scored a brace against Crystal Palace and he scored against West Ham. So that's 3 goals in the last 4 game weeks for Gabriel, and he's been on a great run. And Arsenal have looked much sharper and also much more threatening since they returned from Dubai. They've kept a few clean sheets along the way. They've scored 16 and only conceded 2 in the last 4 game weeks. So Gabriel for me is definitely worth it. You can also go for Saliba. I think either is absolutely fine, even Ben White, but Gabriel is probably the most cost-effective option at your disposal. Now, next up, we're going to add some double gameweek defenders, of course, and we're going to go for a Luton Town one. And of course, it's none other than Alfie Doughty. Yes, Bell was priced at 3.9 million, and I will go for him in this setup. But in terms of starting one of these Luton Town defenders, I think Doughty's by far the best option, and he's worth that extra 0.7 million over Bell because he's got the bonus points potential. He can get the odd assist and maybe a goal every now and then. So Alfie Doughty for me is an incredible option. He created 9 chances in Game Week 24 against Sheffield United at home, and he's got 47 chances created for the entire season. But I'm going to go for Bell as well and go for that double up, and you could start both if you wish. But the plan is to put Bell on the bench, as I'll discuss using FPL.team later on. But Bell is one of the more nailed on Luton Town defenders. Not much goal threat going on, to be honest, and I'd rather go for Doughty, as I mentioned. And I don't see a clean sheet for Luton Town against Man United at home or Liverpool away, to be quite honest with you. But now moving on to the other defenders, and this is another double gameweek player. It's going to be Virgil van Dijk. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a major doubt, as I discussed in the trans tips video, and whilst the injury isn't serious, it's a reoccurrence of that same knee problem, and that's the big concern and the reason why Trent was subbed off at half-time against Burnley. I think with Van Dijk, what you get is a very steady option. He's priced at 6.4 million, so he might not be the most affordable pick, but he's also got goal threat, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was a 15-pointer on the horizon. And with Trent's situation and Robertson not guaranteed to start both games, I think Virgil van Dijk is the safest option to cover that Liverpool defence. Now, the final play I'm going for here is maybe a bit controversial. You don't need to go for him. He's a bit expensive to leave on your bench potentially, but I'm going for a Stupinian, and I think Brighton can keep a clean sheet against Sheffield United away. You might even want to go for Van Heck instead to save you an extra million. That can go a long way to upgrading a key position in this team. But that's the defensive five. I wouldn't start both Luton Town defenders, and we'll talk about this using FPL team later on. But the main options here in the defence are Virgil van Dijk, Doughty, and Gabriel, or any Arsenal defender of your choice. I'm not a huge fan of Ross Barkley, but he's been in good form since Game Week 15 with his overall performances, and he's adding goals and assists to that, and that makes him, at times, a bonus points magnet. So I do like Ross Barkley. If you're looking for a Luton Town midfielder, he's by far the best option they have to offer. You might also consider Adebayo or Colton Morris up front, but I do think there are 3 better forwards at the very least. You could even argue there are 4 or 5 in Double Gameweek 25. But Ross Barkley's in here. He's not the best option overall, but he's cheap, he's got a double, and he's also in very good form overall. Next up is Diogo Jota, and you might argue Diaz is just as good, if not better. But I just think Jota's more efficient, he's a better finisher, and he's also been very consistent ever since he's become a starter in Salah's absence. So Jota for me is one of my favourite captaincy options in Double Gameweek 25. Next up is Phil Foden. He's a decent alternative for the captaincy, but I will stick with another Man City attacker that we all kind of know of by name. But Foden is a good option, and in terms of Man City midfielders, he is my favourite in the long term. But of course, we cannot forget arguably the best player in the Premier League, and we're talking about none other than Kevin De Bruyne. I'm going for 2 Man City midfielders. You can go for 1 defender and also just go for Foden in the midfield, but in this setup, I'm going for 2 Man City midfielders, the 2 very best you can go for. But will Foden and De Bruyne start the 2 games in Double Gameweek 25? I'm not so sure about that, and I think De Bruyne is a major rotation risk for most of the season, especially in the coming weeks where Man City have a very congested fixture schedule with the Champions League. You've also got the FA Cup on the horizon in late February, so between Game Weeks 26 and 27, and you've got so many Premier League games, including a double in Game Week 25, and also featuring in blank Game Week 26. So for me, Kevin De Bruyne is risky, but it's a high risk, high reward pick, and he's certainly worth the value. Even off the bench, he's producing returns, so he's an excellent FPL option regardless. Now, the final midfielder is Anthony Gordon, but you can go for cheap alternatives like Garnacho to sit on your bench. But Gordon at home to Bournemouth, you could even start him this week. He's only blanked once all season in the league at St James's Park, and that was against Nottingham Forest. But Gordon's consistency is very impressive, and he's already back, of course. He had that shocking start against Nottingham Forest away from home in Game Week 24, so he's back sooner than expected. He's always a yellow flag player, it seems, in FPL this season, but for me, Gordon has been one of the very best budget midfielders. Only Palmer has really trumped him, and he's got great fixtures up until Game Week 32. There are plenty of forwards to choose from in FPL in the long term, but for Game Week 25, I will narrow it down to 3, starting with Darwin Núñez, and he is so frustrating from time to time. He gets so many yellow cards, but with this double coming up, I think he can be a tremendous option, and even as a 1 game week punt in terms of your normal teams, using free transfers or even a hit, I think Darwin Núñez is worth it. Just bear in mind, blank Game Week 26 could be a concern if you already have too many Liverpool players on top of Luton Town, Spurs, and Chelsea. But Darwin Núñez is arguably the second best forward in Game Week 25. I also like Alvarez, of course, but there is no room for him in this specific best free hit team. And not to mention, even single game week options like Højlund look very encouraging right now. You've also got Adebayo and Colton Morris, as I mentioned earlier. But the second forward I'm going to go for is another consistent option. Last season, he was the second best forward in FPL, and that's Ivan Toney. Since his return from that 9-month suspension, he's only blanked against Man City, and he's returned in every other game. And yes, he's facing Man City again in Double Game Week 25 and Liverpool at home, but he can produce at least 1 goal in those 2 games and get a couple of bonus points. And in the long term, he covers blank Game Week 26 and Game Week 29. So not just for a free hit. I like Toney on a wild card, and I'd still bring him in despite the tough fixtures. And the last player is going to be the easiest of them all, Erling Haaland. He's arguably the best triple captaincy option, period, at least on paper, with 2 home fixtures against Brentford and Chelsea. And Erling Haaland scored a brace in Game Week 24 against Everton, and now everyone's going to flock to him. His ownership's going to get to 80% or more. The effective ownership will probably be at least 150% around your rank. And honestly, in terms of triple captaincy choices, only Solanke in Double Gameweek 28 really rivals him. And in this game week, maybe Jota, Foden, De Bruyne, Darwin Núñez would be decent alternatives. But for me, Erling Haaland's by far the best, and he's definitely going to be the captaincy option with this team. In goal, I would go for Flecken with Areola sitting on the bench. That's quite self-explanatory. The back three would be Gabriel, Doughty and Van Dijk. The midfield four is Barkley, Foden, De Bruyne and Jota. And the front three is Haaland, Tony and Darwin, with Haaland as the captain. And I'd probably put Jota as the vice. The bench is also quite strong with Areola, Gordon, Bell and Estupiñán. And you could argue Estupiñán over Gabriel, or even going for Bell and having another Double Gameweek player. But I want to show you some alternative picks, because some of you might disagree with this and you might even be prepared to go without De Bruyne in order to get those funds to upgrade other positions. So with this alternative squad, we've gone for Raya instead of Flecken, and that also allows you to go for Ake in defense, with De Bruyne making way for Heung-min Son, and you can also buy Saka instead of having Barkley in the midfield. And in order to do that, you also have to make some downgrades elsewhere, not just De Bruyne downgraded to Son, but you can also go for Garnacho instead of Gordon, Van Heck instead of Estupiñán. You still have Bell there and Areola as cheap budget enablers, but as you can see, it's very close in terms of value and budget, because I've only got 0.1 million left in the bank with this 15-man squad. But the same front three pretty much. You can also go for Alvarez if you wish, but I've gone for a different setup here with one Man City defender and also Saka and Son as two exceptional single gameweek options. The captaincy would be the same, Jota's the vice and Haaland as the captain. Nothing would change there. But the expected points with this team would be 96.3, whilst with the other one it's 99.4. But it's also worth mentioning that Flecken is projected to score more points than Raya. So if we do change that and we keep things the same, actually, if we put it in the right way, Flecken would then upgrade this team to 98.3 expected points. So let me know, which squad do you prefer? The first one, the one I've been talking about for most of this video, or this one with some alternative picks and some nice differentials that could do very well for you in Double Gameweek 25. And Saka and Son for me could be really good in this Double Gameweek, despite not having those two fixtures that maybe you're chasing. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Hound. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Double Gameweek 25 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.